Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to really get into a foundational topic for Christians, global missions.
That's right. We're drawing heavily from a presentation by Costi Hinn, which he titled, Why Spread God's Glory Among the Nations?
And our goal here really is to kind of distill the main arguments he makes. We want to look at the motivations, the practical side of proclaiming the gospel worldwide.
Yeah, we'll be looking at the roots of it all, the role worship plays, which is huge, the reality of spiritual struggle, and, well, that unavoidable call to obedience.
And this isn't just theory, is it? Hinn really pushes that understanding why we spread God's glory. It can fundamentally change your life.
Absolutely. He connects it to everything, how you manage money, your calendar, how you raise your kids, pray for the lost, share the gospel.
Even how you see your own church. So, yeah, let's unpack this. It sounds like it goes deep. Yeah, Costi Hinn's vision for missions. A life-altering question.
Yeah.
So Hinn kicks things off with this really direct question, doesn't he? Why spread God's glory among the nations? And he frames it as having a, well, life-altering outcome.
Right. He's saying the answer isn't just, academic. It genuinely impacts how you handle your money, your schedule, how you parent.
How you pray, how you share your faith, even how you view the local church itself. It's like a complete reframing of, well, everything.
It really sets the stage. He's making it clear that missions aren't some secondary thing, like a hobby for a few super keen people.
No, definitely not.
It's positioned as absolutely central, something that should reshape how every believer lives day to day. It's not just about getting more information. It's about letting God's global purpose reorder your whole existence.
Before we dig into his main arguments, maybe we should touch on his background. Because his personal story gives quite a bit of context to where he's coming from now.
Yeah, that's really helpful context. Hinn is very open about his past involvement in what he now calls the prosperity gospel.
And he's quite blunt about it. He says it's not a gospel at all.
Exactly. He describes it as believing God was like a magic genie. If you had enough faith, gave enough money, made the right declarations, then God had to give you what you wanted.
Like promotions, jobs, money, whatever you desired.
Right. He even talks about demanding miracles, demanding a wife, demanding his personal dreams come true. He uses this really striking image of himself as the puppeteer and Jesus as a puppet on a string.
Wow. That's a powerful image, how self-focused it was.
It really highlights the shift. He contrasts that view starkly with where he is now.
He describes that old view of God as twisted, right?
Yeah.
And goes so far as to say the God he believed in then wasn't a real God at all.
Yes, and consequently he says he was not saved, but damned and on the road to hell. He's very clear that what he practiced wasn't just a slightly off version of Christianity.
It's interesting you mentioned Apollos earlier, how he was maybe a little off, but teachable. Hinn sees his own past as something far more serious, a fundamentally false system.
Precisely. It was a complete overhaul for him. From a faith where, as he puts it, everything was about you and you and you, to realizing
God does not exist for your glory. You exist for his.
that's the core shift. He says the gospel involves you, yes, but it's fundamentally all about him. And he admits he couldn't even grasp the concept of glory before because his faith had always been about himself.
That personal experience, that journey from one extreme to the other, it definitely lends a certain weight to his teaching on this now.
No doubt. And he also brings in experiences from his time as a pastor. He talks about trying to emphasize global missions in his local church.
And getting pushback.
Yeah, sometimes condescending reactions, people telling him to focus more about the local church, suggesting maybe he was getting a bit too carried away, almost like he thought it was, Jim Elliot or someone.
Right, that kind of calm down, focus here attitude.
Exactly. And that experience seems to inform his critique of what he sees as a false divide between the local and the global church focus. Psalm 96, the biblical springboard for a global mandate.
Okay, so when Hinn builds his case, he points specifically to Psalm 96. He says it impacted him so much he just had to preach it.
Yes, he reads the whole psalm, all 13 verses, and points out the connections to 1 Chronicles 16, David dedicating the ark. He really anchors his argument there.
And he sees it as a sort of missionary psalm.
That's the idea. It's a call that goes beyond just, worship within the community. It actively pushes God's people to declare his greatness to the nations.
Like a wake-up call, as he puts it, taking us out of our small story into God's bigger one.
Precisely. A story centered on God's glory being known among all peoples, not just us. It provides this sweeping, God-centered global vision that challenges any kind of inward focus.
So if we look closely at Psalm 96, what are the key themes Hinn pulls out as drivers for this global mission?
Well, first and foremost, it's the glory of God itself. Hinn argues God's character, his worth, his works. They inherently demand global proclamation. His greatness just can't be contained.
So the mission isn't primarily about us or even about the needs of people ultimately. It's about God himself.
That's his starting point. The gospel is all about him. We as believers are byproducts of what Christ accomplished. Our existence serves his glory, not the other way around.
And that connects to the universal scope in the psalm too, right? The call isn't just to Israel.
Exactly. The invitation to worship is explicitly for all nations, the families of the peoples. It's not limited to one ethnicity, one language group. It's a global call for everyone to give God the honor he deserves.
Which really stands against any kind of narrow view of God's plan.
Definitely. And then there's the stark contrast with idols. The psalm says all the gods of the peoples are worthless idols.
And Hinn points out the Hebrew word means like nothingness,
Yeah,
emptiness.
right. It's a powerful declaration. These aren't just lesser gods, they are non-entities. This highlights the absolute necessity of proclaiming the one true and living God, because every alternative is fundamentally empty. It underscores the desperate need people have.
And the final theme from the psalm he emphasizes is imminent judgment.
Yes, the idea that God will judge the earth. He's coming to judge the world in righteousness. This isn't some abstract future event. It gives the mission a real sense of urgency.
Because time is limited. There's a timer, as he says.
A timer on life, on this world, and crucially, a timer on the opportunity to choose this day whom you will serve. It makes the mission time-sensitive. 3. The 4 driving truths of global missions.
Okay, so building on that foundation in Psalm 96, Hinn then boils down the why of missions into 4 core truths. These are like the engines driving it all.
Right, and these aren't just isolated points. They form a biblical basis that he argues should really direct how every Christian thinks about their life and purpose.
So the first one circles back to what we just discussed. The glory of God is the driving force and aim. Everything serves to magnify him.
Exactly. His character, his worth, his works, they demand global proclamation. It's
Yeah.
all about him. We are the byproducts. He won't share his glory.
He uses that story from 1 Samuel 5, doesn't he? With Dagon falling before the ark.
Yeah, it's such a vivid picture. The Philistines put the captured ark next to their idol, Dagon, and the next morning, Dagon's face down. They set him up, and the next morning, he's down again, head and hands broken off.
A clear message.
Hinn uses it to show that every idol must fall and only Yahweh stands. All other gods are worthless idols, nothingness. And this is so central for Hinn, given his own past. Moving from that, it's all about you, prosperity view.
To God does not exist for your glory. You exist for his. That fundamental shift.
That's the bedrock for him.
Okay, so the second truth.
The worship of God is the goal of missions. The ultimate end isn't just conversions or churches planted or even social good, as important as those are. It's about gathering worshipers from every nation, tribe, and tongue.
Building God's kingdom of worshipers, not human ones.
Right. And this raises that key question. What's the link between worship and witness?
Hinn says worship breeds witness. That one flows from the other.
Yes, worship always overflows into witness. He suggests that if a church or an individual has a missions problem, it might actually indicate a deeper worship problem.
That's interesting. How does that work?
Well, when someone is genuinely transformed by the gospel, when they really grasped who they were before Christ, maybe looking in that BC mirror he talks about and understand what he's done for them purely by grace.
That realization that you didn't save yourself.
Exactly. That awareness makes it impossible to just keep quiet. It overflows into wanting to declare God's goodness. So a life laid down in worship naturally leads to witness. It's not forced. It's an outflow.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the third truth?
The judgment of God is the urgency of missions. This brings back that sense of immediacy we saw in the psalm. The king is coming to judge.
He is coming to judge the earth in righteousness and faithfulness.
Right. And this means there's that timer on this life, a timer on this world, and a timer on choose this day whom you will serve. It forces the ultimate question.
Are people going to meet him as savior or as judge?
That's the stark reality that fuels the urgency. And Hinn specifically calls out those cynical voices who dismiss this urgency, saying things like, oh, people have always been saying that.
Implying it's not really urgent because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, but Hinn counters that the consistency of the promise doesn't negate it. It confirms it. The time to act is now.
Okay, and the fourth driving truth.
Yeah.
This one seems to be about our role.
Yes. Our obedience to God is the agency of missions. God chooses to use, as Hinn puts it, sinful, puny, finicky humans as his plan A. There is no plan B.
So our response, our obedience, is how God actually gets his mission done.
That's the argument. Obedience to God is the agency of missions. He really pushes back against the idea that missions is something weird or odd or wild.
He calls it a normal mandate for the church.
Normal. He even says the Bible does not even entertain pushback on global missions. It's assumed. It's just part of what the church is.
And he challenges that idea, waiting around for some special mystical calling, doesn't he?
Very much so. He looks at figures like Adoniram Judson or William Carey and says, fundamentally, they weren't waiting for a feeling. They were simply obedient people.
Just doing what God commanded.
Right. Obedience comes first. Then God clarifies how, whether it's by going or sending others through support and prayer or giving financially. But the action starts with obedience to the command that's already there. 4. The challenge of comfortable Christianity.
Now, Hinn spends a good bit of time critiquing what he calls comfortable Christian life,
Yeah.
especially in the West, in the American First World context.
Yeah, he sees this comfort, which seems harmless on the surface, as a real danger, a potential hindrance to gospel outreach.
How so? How does comfort get in the way?
He argues it can breed a kind of small, safe, self-focused faith. When life is generally comfortable, the idea of God's heart for, say, unreached people groups can feel distant, foreign, or even optional.
Your faith goals might become more about, like, my personal growth, my good church, my kids having Christian friends.
Exactly. All good things in themselves, but potentially self-focused rather than focused on God's global renown. Comfort can lead to routines and priorities that unintentionally sideline God's bigger mission. Personal ease gets prioritized over his glory among the nations.
And this comfort, he says, can create a false dichotomy.
Yes, particularly the false dichotomy between focusing on the local church versus the global church. He sees this as a misguided separation.
Where being really invested locally somehow excuses a lack of global vision.
That's the danger, he points out. He insists the local church must always have a vision for the global. The Great Commission isn't just another program, it's normal and obvious to what the church is supposed to be.
But it's easy to get caught up in local stuff, events, budgets, internal dynamics.
Very easy. And Hinn says when local comfort becomes the main priority, the casualty is missions, and the casualty is the global church.
He uses that analogy of Peter on the Mount of Transfiguration, right? Wanting to just stay there in the glory.
Yeah, Peter's reaction, let's build shelters and just stay right here. Hinn sees that as representing a reluctance to engage globally, wanting the comfort of the mountaintop instead of going down into the messy work of mission.
And he contrasts that with his own efforts as a pastor trying to model a global vision locally.
Right. And he shares those anecdotes about the pushback he got, like people saying, oh, I know your buddy Brooks, sort of dismissing his passion as just echoing his friend.
Who is this Brooks friend he mentions?
Hinn clearly respects him a lot, sees him as someone who lives out missions as just normal. He even tells that funny story, maybe slightly embellished, he admits, about Brooks and a pig, just to illustrate his friend's very practical, hands-on, maybe even slightly wild approach to ministry. It shows a dedication that maybe makes comfortable people nervous.
So this comfort doesn't just create a false dichotomy. It also seems to diminish the motivation for actually sharing the gospel personally.
That's another key point. Hinn thinks apathy towards evangelism often comes from forgetting our own transformation. Forgetting to look in that BC mirror before Christ's mirror to see who we were.
And forgetting what God has done for us purely by grace.
Exactly. He pushes back against self-improvement thinking, like from David Goggins or others, saying true change isn't about willpower. It's God's grace. If we lose sight of the magnitude of our own rescue, the urgency to share that rescue fades.
He also warns about other Christians, maybe well-meaning but forgetful ones, who might dampen that initial zeal.
Yeah, the ones who say things like, oh, that's cute, you'll calm down, or what do you think you are, Jim Elliott? Trying to pull people back into a more sensible, comfortable routine.
Like, just join a small group, tithe, attend regularly, behave yourself, but don't get too radical about this mission stuff.
Right. Hinn's response is passionate. When Jesus saves you and you know that it's him and it wasn't you, you stop caring about what everybody else thinks and you declare it from the rooftops to the nations. It's a God-centered boldness that overrides social pressure.
He uses another image, too, the hamster on a wheel in church.
Yeah, people feeling busy with church activities, classes, committees, but ultimately distracted by, as he puts it, arguments over the church committee budget for the filing cabinet or Internal church drama and plays for power?
All while the main mission, spreading the glory of God to the nations, gets ignored.
Exactly. He notes the irony of Christians reading biographies of figures like George Mueller or David Brainerd, admiring their faith, but then not actually doing anything differently. It becomes passive admiration, not active emulation.
Okay, and this ties into his understanding of spiritual struggle as well, doesn't it? Especially how it plays out in comfortable settings.
Yes, this is crucial. He calls spiritual struggle the battle for the mind and the battle for souls, the greatest battle and greatest mission. But he's careful to define what it is and
It's
isn't.
not about, like, blaming demons for your car trouble.
Right, he jokes that's often just self-inflicted consequence, and it's not a constant shouting match of, I rebuke you, devil, though he affirms Satan has no ultimate power over true believers.
So what is the battle, especially comparing different contexts?
He contrasts international settings, where spiritual opposition might be more overt, more obviously demonic, perhaps linked to visible idolatry.
Yeah, with the American context, where he says the strategy is more covert.
Yes. The devil labors diligently to be more covert. The goal is to make demonic activity seem not real or it's a little weird. Keep things normal, copacetic.
Why? So believers don't take the battle seriously.
Exactly. So they don't go, oh, this is real, let's go to war. Instead, this covert strategy lulls believers into distraction and comfort, arguing about filing cabinets, getting caught in church politics.
Instead of engaging in the urgent work of spreading the glory of God to the nations, comfort becomes the enemy's tool. V, the normalcy of missions. Going, sending, giving. So despite the challenges of comfort and covert spiritual struggle, Hinn keeps hammering this idea that missions involvement is just normal. Not weird, not optional, but normal Christian living.
Absolutely normal. And this connects back to his point about calling. While God certainly sets people apart, the baseline isn't waiting for a unique feeling, it's obedience.
Like Judson, like Carey, they were obedient people, first and foremost.
That's his emphasis. Don't use the lack of some dramatic, ethereal call as an excuse for inaction. Obey the command that's already clear.
And God will then show you your part, whether it's actually going or sending by supporting those who go, or giving financially.
Right. He points again to Psalm 96.3. Tell of his glory among the nations. It's a command. It implies you either go, send, or give so others can go. He repeats that the Bible just assumes this. There's no room for pushback.
And he makes this really practical, doesn't he? Bringing it down to everyday life.
Very practical. Evangelism is normal. Making a big deal about missions is normal. Raising up missionaries is normal. He talks about finances, about parenting.
Yeah, he mentions his own kids, his son Titus, wanting to be a missionary pilot like Nate Saint, even though his wife might prefer him closer to home.
Right. And the little aside about checking Paul Washer's clothes on social media because his wife warned him, it just shows how these big missional ideas weave into the fabric of real family life. It's not abstract.
He also talks about money specifically, especially for those who have more resources.
Yes, he encourages them to be gospel patrons. He uses that passage from 1 Timothy 6, telling the wealthy not just to avoid pride, but to be rich in good works, generous, ready to share.
Using their wealth as kingdom funding advancement tools.
Exactly. He contrasts this with maybe focusing only on secular financial advice, like from Dave Ramsey, good advice in its place, perhaps, but kingdom funding should be just as normal, just as central to financial thinking for a believer.
He's really trying to redefine what normal looks like for a Christian.
Completely. He contrasts this missional normalcy with what he sees as the weird priorities of getting bogged down in church committee budgets or internal power plays. That's the distraction.
Whereas caring about other cultures normal, being excited to reach people who don't look like us, normal. That's the vision he's casting. 6. The urgency of God's judgment, meeting Christ as Savior or Judge. And driving all this normalcy, all this obedience, is that recurring theme of urgency rooted in God's coming judgment.
Yes, the King is coming. Psalm 96 says creation itself will rejoice because he comes to judge the earth. This isn't just about punishment. It's about God setting things right, abolishing wickedness, making all things new.
The new creation, new heavens, new earth. It's the ultimate hope.
But it also means that timer is ticking, the timer on life, on sin, on death, and on the chance to choose Christ, which brings us back to that stark choice.
Savior or Judge, how will people meet him?
That reality gives gospel ministry its compelling edge. It answers the why bother question decisively.
Because, as Paul asks, how can they hear without someone preaching? How can they preach unless they are sent? We need those beautiful feet bringing the good news.
And Hinn offers that humbling picture of our role. just the paintbrush.
Nobody focuses on the brush. They admire the painting and the artist.
Right. It keeps the focus on God and his work, not on us. It frees us to be used, knowing the outcome and the glory belong to him.
He brings up Adoniram Judson again here, doesn't he? Despite all the suffering prison, losing family.
Judson could still write, "The future is as bright as the promises of God." That kind of endurance comes from knowing the why, knowing God's sovereign plan and his ultimate victory.
It stands in sharp contrast to those cynical voices just playing the waiting game, dismissing the urgency.
Exactly. Trusting God's promises, understanding his timeline, that's what fuels persistent, faithful mission work, regardless of the immediate circumstances or apparent lack of results.
Outro. So, wrapping this up, Costi Hinn makes a really strong case that spreading God's glory isn't just one option among many for Christians. It's core.
Yeah, it flows directly from his glory, aims at his worship, is compelled by his coming judgment, and happens through our, well, simple obedience.
It really challenges that comfortable, inward-looking faith we can sometimes slip into.
It does. Which leads to a thought for you, the listener. If this global mission is truly normal, if it flows naturally from a heart captivated by God in worship,
What might one small, practical step look like for you this week? Just one thing to align your life a little more with God's big global story.
it doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's praying specifically for a missionary or an unreached people group. Maybe it's giving a little extra to a missions cause. Maybe it's just starting a conversation about faith with a neighbor. Something practical.
Definitely something to consider.
Oh.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We look forward to our next session together.